Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. She refused to serve a meal to this black CEO, but didn't expect what happened next. The Flight 498 of the company Sky Atlantic Airways was leaving the airport JFK at the exact time, direction Londres Heathrow. Through the terminal's large bay windows, the last rays of the sun reflected on the white and silver fuselage of the long-haul aircraft. On board, in first class, an atmosphere of hushed calm and discreet luxury reigned. Light beige leather seats, adjustable to become perfectly flat beds, lined with cashmere blankets, of the Riedel crystal glasses lined up on varnished trays, and a menu designed by a French star chef, exclusively for passengers in the front saloon. The passengers seated in this bubble of privilege distractedly leafed through business magazines or tapped away at their tablets, lulled by the murmur of the ventilation system. They encountered a few familiar names in power circles: a senator from Massachusetts, the CEO of an American television network, a Hollywood actor traveling incognito under a cap. And then there was Marcus Langford. Costume Armani midnight blue tailored, black glasses with thin frames, and a full-grain leather briefcase, closed by a discreet gold buckle. Marcus, from the height of his 43 years old, had that quiet elegance that one only finds in those who know exactly who they are. But beneath this apparent calm, there was a story. Born in the Chicago's southern neighborhoods, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs to pay the rent, Marcus had known the damp, infested apartments, the sound of sirens at night, and overcrowded classrooms where few believed in the future of a black boy like him. What he hadn't known, however, was resignation. Gifted with formidable intelligence, he had won a full scholarship to WITH, founded Lynx Technology Sat 27 in a Texas garage, and transformed this startup into a cybersecurity giant, today valued at $12.7 billion. But despite the magazine covers, international conferences, government partnerships, there was one thing Marcus had never achieved: immunity against doubting look. That same look, in fact, that he caught the very moment he set foot in the first-class cabin. Ashley Bennett, the head flight attendant, with her impeccably blow-dried hair, pale manicure, and a smile on her face, looked up briefly. Her gaze slid over Marcus with a subtle coldness, almost imperceptible to the uninitiated. But Marcus sensed it immediately. It was the look of suspicion, the one he'd seen all his life in luxury boutiques, hotel lobbies, and business clubs. She took a step forward, her voice honeyed but mechanical. "Sir, are you sure you're in the right place? First class is further forward." A floating silence. A suspended heartbeat. Marcus didn't flinch. He calmly opened the inside pocket of his jacket, took out his e-ticket, and handed it to her. "Seat 1A. First class, yes." Ashley took the ticket. Her lips pursed into a professional smile, but her eyes betrayed barely concealed embarrassment. She scanned the QR code wordlessly, handed it back, and simply nodded. "No, welcome aboard. No, Mr. Langford." Marcus settled down without a word, setting his briefcase down by his seat. He stared out the window, his face impassive, but his mind analyzed every detail, every disguised microaggression. The takeoff was smooth. A few minutes later, the other first-class passengers were offered vintage champagne, of the hot towels, and the exclusive evening menu: Wagyu beef fillet, sea bass with white truffles, or Thai-inspired vegetarian dish. Marcus, however, still hadn't received anything. He waited. Once, twice, 3 times as Ashley walked past him without even looking at him. Then he raised his hand, politely. Ashley stopped, visibly annoyed. Her smile had turned tight. "Any concerns, sir? I just wanted to order the vegetarian dish, if possible." Ashley crossed her arms, the weight of her prejudice barely contained. "Sorry, sir. There aren't any left. You bought your ticket a little late, I suppose." Without waiting for an answer, she turned on her heel. Marcus remained silent. But within him, a quiet fire lit. What Ashley didn't know is that Marcus Langford was not just a customer. He was one of the main investors in Sky Atlantic Airways. He owns 7% U capital off the company, sits on the advisory board, and had even contributed to the fleet's digital diversification strategy. This Vol 498 was not an ordinary trip. It was the return from a confidential meeting with the New York shareholders, at his request. And if he had chosen first class rather than the proposed private jet, It was to discreetly observe the services of the company he was helping to shape. Out of humility, out of strategy, but not to be put down. At that moment, Marcus decided to say nothing. Not right away. He simply opened a book from his satchel, The Souls of Black Folk of W.B. Du Bois, and turned the pages calmly. Every word resonated within him, for he knew that what had just happened was not neither an error nor an oversight, but the fruit of a deeply ingrained mental structure. That Ashley thought she was a humiliation was not in reality than an opening. At the back of the cabin, behind the soft armchairs and discreetly illuminated walls, David Keller, the cabin crew chief, watched the scene with a mixture of concern and attention. A man in his 50s with a piercing gaze and a confident gait, David had worked his way up the ranks in commercial aviation over the past 20 years. He knew every protocol, every important passenger, and above all, he had an elephant's memory for names. Marcus Langford was one of those names etched in his mind. A few weeks earlier, during a special training session organized by management, the entire first-class team had been intensively briefed on VIP management, and Marcus Langford was at the center of these instructions. Please understand, the operations director had insisted, Mr. Langford is not only a passenger, but also a significant shareholder of Sky Atlantic. Your behavior can have a direct impact on the reputation and governance of our company. Now, seeing Ashley Bennett turn her back on Marcus after refusing him a meal, David felt his blood run cold. He approached her with a calm but firm step, placing a discreet hand on her shoulder. Ashley, do you realize you just refused Mr. Langford lunch? Ashley turned around, her face drawn and a little defensive. She responded with a hint of irritation, as if to justify her actions. So what? He was rude to me, and he doesn't seem very credible. David frowned, his voice low but authoritative. You don't know who you're talking to, do you? This gentleman is a major shareholder in our company. He's not just a client. He's practically your superior. Ashley's face suddenly paled. She looked down, as if reality had just hit her with the force of an invisible punch. A mixture of shame, suppressed anger, and fear coursed through her. She realized she had just made a grave mistake, a mistake that would far transcend her mere prejudices. During this time, Marcus, perfectly in control of himself, turned the pages of his book with impressive calm, The Souls of Black Folk, of W.B. Du Bois, a book he had reread dozens of times, every word of which fueled his reflection on the struggle for dignity, justice, and equality. He knew that his dignity could not depend on Ashley's immediate recognition, nor on his service on board. A discreet, almost imperceptible message was then transmitted from the cockpit to the ground, directly connecting to Sky Atlantic headquarters. The flight captain, informed of the situation, understood the importance of action. Tact and speed were essential. Upon landing, as the wheels touched down on the Heathrow runway, a special reception committee awaited Marcus on the tarmac. A black limousine with tinted windows was parked right next to the boarding bridge, ready to whisk him away. A professional photographer, discreet but ready to immortalize the event, was adjusting his settings. And, most importantly, Robert Hastings, the CEO of Sky Atlantic, was there, with a genuine smile on his face, waiting to come and personally apologize. Back on board, Ashley's face had lost some of its luster. When she was summoned to the crew chief's office, the atmosphere was heavy. David Keller, sitting behind his desk, didn't need many words. The next day, an internal memo quickly circulated throughout Sky Atlantic Airways, documented discriminatory behavior. Immediate suspension. Disciplinary investigation initiated. Ashley Bennett was about to face the gravity of her actions. And more broadly, the company was realizing that, despite its image of luxury and modernity, it still had to combat persistent prejudices that threatened its reputation and its future. But the moment that changed everything happened 2 days later, when Marcus Langford, in a gesture both sober and powerful, decided to share his experience with the general public. Sitting in his office bathed in the soft light of a Texas morning, Marcus turned on his camera, took a deep breath, and spoke with a calm voice, filled with a sincerity and gravity that captivated from the first seconds. Movie camera Marcus Langford, a refused meal. It wasn't the meal that hurt me. It wasn't the refusal of the menu, nor the lack of politeness. He paused, letting his words sink into the silence. It's the look, the silent judgment that says, You shouldn't be here." He bowed his head slightly, a gesture of mixed humility and strength. I was taught to maintain dignity, even in the face of humiliation, to never let others define my worth. Marcus's gaze grew more intense, almost defiant. I wouldn't be telling this story if I were the only one going through it. But millions of Black women and men live this reality every day, on airplanes, in hotels, in offices, on the street. They're looked at as if they've stolen their spot. His tone softened, revealing deep empathy. I didn't steal anything. I worked for every second of my ascent. I faced invisible barriers that many don't even see. Then, with unshakable conviction, and now I work so that others can rise, without being judged. This flight reminded me why we must continue to fight. For elegance to be recognized, regardless of skin color. The message was simple, direct, and of rare power. In less than 48 hours, the video had reached more than 20 million views. The comments poured in. Solidarity, personal testimonies, calls to action. This was no longer just the story of a Black CEO denied a first-class meal, but a universal symbol of the fight against the subtle and insidious discrimination that persists in the workplace and beyond. Several airlines immediately announced the strengthening of their anti-racism and anti-discrimination training. Major institutions committed to reviewing their policies, raising employee awareness, and establishing constructive dialogue around these issues. Sky Atlantic Airways, under media pressure and aware of its responsibility, made a historic gesture. It created a university scholarship in the name of Marcus Langford, intended to support Black students in aviation-related fields, a field where diversity was still largely insufficient. As for Ashley Bennett, after clumsy attempts at a public apology, she gradually disappeared from the media spotlight. Her name unfortunately became synonymous with intolerable behavior, an example not to be followed. A year later, at a prestigious gala organized by the Langford Foundation for Education and Equality, Marcus took the stage in front of a packed room of young graduates, opinion leaders, and committed partners. With the same calm and quiet strength that characterized him, he declared, "The best response to humiliation is greatness, and the best revenge is elegance." A standing ovation followed these words, powerful and moving. This time, no one doubted that he belonged, not only in first class on an airplane, but also as an emblematic figure in the fight for dignity and equality. His story, born from a simple refusal of a meal, had become a universal message. Dignity cannot be bought. It must be earned and defended day after day.